Couch Devotionals with Pastor Scott. Good morning and welcome to another Couch Devotionals with Pastor Scott. Today is day 1 of week 5. Hope you're having a great day so far. Today we are now after the 10 Commandments, and we're going to be looking at some of the commentary on the 10 Commandments. So we're starting at Exodus 21, verses 1 through 11. We're going to look back to the 10 Commandments, though, because they're so important, especially to the commentary. So, and we're also going to be talking about an article that I have, or a book rather, from a seminary professor of mine, and a concept, that of the mythical norm. Before we begin, this is Plague Doctor. Megan purchased this. It's one of those old-timey doctors with the nose that comes out. We thought it was fun. Something to bring a smile to the day. So, let's begin. Chapter 21, verses 1 through 11. These are the ordinances that you shall set before them. When you buy a male Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, but in the 7th he shall go out a free person without debt. If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave declares, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out a free person, then his master shall bring him before God. He shall be brought to the door or to the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him for life. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master, who designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to foreign people, since he has dealt unfairly with her. If he designates her with or for his son, he shall deal with her as a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish the food, clothing, or marital rights of the first wife. And if he does not do these 3 things for her, she shall go out without debt, without payments of money. So, this is an odd one, right? One might say. We don't normally preach about texts like this because it seems so distant and so unrelatable. But it points out some major power struggles within early Scripture, and we see it reflected in the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments is a very male-oriented system of delivering this. Often it's males that, within this cultural context of Israel, it was males that had the power. They had the things that would be coveted, and ox and ass. They were able to hold slaves. They had material wealth like land. They were the heads of the household. They were the people that had the power. They were what my professor in seminary would call the mythical norm. They were the people at the very, very top of the power system, and they had placed themselves there, or society had continued to place themselves there. And part of what we're going to be talking about today is the ways in which Scripture has been used to keep that power where it is. I'd like to read a section from Cheryl Anderson's book, Ancient Laws and Contemporary Controversies. And we're going to go a little bit over 5 minutes, probably closer to 10 today. My professor, Cheryl Anderson, writes, "The fact of the matter is that women are not addressed in the commandments, and their absence communicates messages about the appropriate role for women. Brenner concludes with the observation, interpretation decrees that women are expected to be silently obedient, bound by the commandments, and implicitly subcategorize, as it implicitly subcategorizes them. And that if they protest, feminists are likely to be reprimanded for their uncalled oversensitivity. David Klein, however, has identified the Decalogue's intended addressees. It is an individual, a male, an Israelite, employed, a house owner, married, old enough to have working children but young enough to have living parents, living in a city, wealthy enough to possess an ox and an ass and slaves, important enough to be called to give evidence in a lawsuit. It is a man who is capable of committing and probably tempted to commit everything that is forbidden here in the Ten Commandments, and likely to ignore everything that is enjoined here. It is not commanded to observe it. It is, in short, one might say, a balding Israelite urban male with a midlife crisis and a weight problem in danger of losing his faith. Anderson then continues, basically just as the Decalogue or the Ten Commandments marginalized non-Israelites and women, it also marginalized the poor, those who are unable to own animals and slaves. The Decalogue does not address those groups or their realities. Of course, from a liberation perspective, this is problematic, that the Decalogue also condones slavery. As stated earlier, the exclusions found in these laws help us to understand why conservative church traditions exclude the perspectives of these same groups today. After all, it is scriptural, they'll say, and on a surface they are right. At the same time, these exclusions demonstrate more fully why a liberation approach to biblical interpretation is needed. So I've kind of thrown a lot at you today. The realization that Scripture is written from this very male perspective perhaps is new to you, perhaps it's not. But I think it's very appropriate and very important that we acknowledge this and that we work from this perspective. Scripture, as it was taught to me, was passed down from generation to generation, and often it was the male child that was given this responsibility or given this right. And Scripture is also kind of written in a time of cultural male dominance. And that sort of thing we see today as well. Scripture has shaped us in many, many ways. It's shaped our culture. It's made us prioritize certain things over others. And we can see the ways in which Scripture still ripples into our communities today. That the man is the head of the household and makes these final decisions. That women are to be submissive to their husbands. These sorts of things. And there's a very deep, saturated cultural context that we need to understand if we're going to understand Scripture. So today I'm pointing out this concept of the mythical norm, and I want to ask the question, what other ways do you think Scripture has shaped your worldview? And I'm talking about how we see power dynamics, how we see relationships with other people, how we see is the right way of doing something. How has Scripture shaped your worldview? That's our question for the day. I hope that you have a great day. I hope you have a lot to chew on, because this certainly has a lot to chew on. And we will see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Peace. Couch Devotionals with Pastor Scott.